Happy Sunday, happy Easter. Shaggy SoCal, so good. Shaggy SoCal with Tool for Forza. Um, Time for the second track guide for the upcoming races this week. We did the first one at Sonoma Short, and continuing with the short theme, we're going to be racing Sebring Short as well. Two very different tracks this week. We got Sonoma's going to have the nice rolling elevation changes, it gets the car light and whereas Sebring is flat and a little bit bumpy, but mostly flat. So again, what we'll do is I'll do a couple just flyer laps, just kind of refresh my memory on how I'm getting around the track. Then we'll do a slow kind of the slower track walk. I'll point out the things that specifically I'm looking at, and then I'll run the mock race. Really, the mock race is to kind of validate the initial estimates that I gave to Matt to figure out how many laps we're going to do. When I looked at it before signing on, I'm like, it still may be a lap or too long, but we'll see. This is also one of the rare cases where the lap time I set on the controller initially is faster than what I've been able to do on the wheel. So I think that's just the nature of the track. But anyhow, enough talking. Let's get in. Let's run some laps. And this version of Sebring, again, the two lighting versions of Sebring Day. You've got kind of the overcasty one, which I think is probably what Matt's going to aim for to try and set up for the race. But this one, clearly I've got the how should I say, the sunny, you know, uh, water vapor, optical illusion mirage version. Okay, that's why I'm not as quick. I don't know. First gear there, cut the corner. There's a little curve there. Late apex, this one, get the car to the left side. Brake about where that 2 cone is. I differ from the suggested line a little bit because I'm weird. That might be a little bit too early on the turn in, but that is decent. Down the long back stretch to Sunset Bend. Wind it out in third gear this lap because I think we hit the rev limiter way before we get to the braking zone. Yeah, so definitely want to put it in fourth there. It's kind of one of those in my practice laps. I was just automatically going to fourth, and I never really ran down there to say, do I have to go to fourth? You need to go to fourth. All right, we'll do one more flyer here. I think I've been in fourth gear for that before, so you might be able to line that up in third. A little late on the braking. A bit wider out than I normally take that, but still feel I'm turning in early there. There is a pavement marking I'm looking at. But we'll play around with that in the race. That's better. All right. So that's just kind of two flyers. I didn't really talk that much, but let's start diving into kind of the track walk. So I'll be down here in third. I might put it up into fourth, but what I'm looking for, I'm going to bring the car to the right side. Some people, if you really want, you can try and open turn one up as much as you can. You can cross over that line a bit. I typically don't. I'll keep it to the right of the yellow line. But what I'm looking for, let me fire up my controller so I can use the little stick, is that kind of spectator scaffolding there, in correlation with the braking line. I'm looking for that as I'm coming down the front straightaway, and using that as kind of the static reference. So as I get to that, as that's going out of view, this is about where I'm braking. Some of the other things you can kind of use to help, you know, that you can kind of use to help you find. I think Sebring's got some pretty definitive telephone wires going across. Yep. So you've got two reference points depending on what your braking preference is or what to look for. Obviously, as you come down the front straightaway, you're going to be going under the pedestrian bridge there for the Mobile One. Um, that's way too soon to brake, but it's kind of a reminder. Okay, it's going to be just past that. You can see the wires going across the track. That's the second, your second kind of warning that you're coming up to the braking. But again, for me, it is I'm braking. Just it's as whichever is easier for you to see. If you can see the wires easier, as the wires go out of view, you probably need to start braking. Or if you can see the spectator scaffolding there on the left side, go ahead and use that. That's what I've been using as far as getting onto the brakes and downshifting. For me, it's a third gear turn, so brake, 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 brake. The turn in, I'm still trying to get sorted out. It is just past. I'm still trying to find something that I can kind of reference consistently because I think there is. At first, I thought it's not. If you start turning in as you get past the pit wall or even past this, the pit blend line, I think that's still a little bit too soon, too early of a turn in for turn one. Though I think the second blend line here is too late. So I think it's somewhere as you pass the first one. It might be I might start keying off the grandstands there, or even the maybe the Black Force banders or something. There's going to be something I'm going to find on the left side that'll consistently like, okay, I'm going to release the brakes and turn in and start to roll back into the throttle. Because at least in my own practice like that, I've been tending to take this a little bit. I've been turning in too early. So as I turn in for turn one, I'm gonna be feathering the throttle. I'm probably not going to be really committing back to full throttle until I know I'm at the apex. And again, for me, it's about being able to get back and commit back to full throttle. I don't want to have to be going on and off all the time. Just mainly because of the way the weight transfer is in this car. I don't want to do anything super sudden while either getting off the throttle or back on the throttle that's going to shift the weight uh, severely on and off the rear because it'll get it to kick out or from the weight transfer. So I want to try and be smooth, but you can kind of see the cone there at the apex. That's about where the apex is for this corner, and this is another one I wish the track limits were actually the wall and not the yellow line, because I would totally be trying to get I'd be trying to hit the cone. But again, when you hit the apex there, again, this is a blind, fairly blind. You're really not going to see the exit until you get to the apex. And if you can just spot it, my eyes barely see it. It'll probably be easier to spot at speed. But you'll see the two mobile signs. The second one that's a little further down the track is right behind where the curbing starts. So that's kind of where if I can see that as I'm coming out, and based on the attitude of the car, like if I've apex too early, I'm going to be way out to the right side, I'm going to try and find that curbing to try and get me reset up on the exit. If I've gone in too early and it's kicking me out wide on exit, I'll have to adjust. But the whole idea is I'm going to try and target that curbing to where I can bring the car out and be parallel with it as I exit the corners. So this being about here on exit is probably about ideal, but we'll see. So out of turn one, heading down to turn two. All right, we're running the short version, so we are going to be turning right at the end of the short straight. So I'll probably keep it to the right side and then just kind of let the car on its own, minimize the steering, let the car just kind of go to the left side on its own. Braking is right before the 200 board or right at the 200 board. The other nice thing here with Sebring is we do have some definitive, kind of white lines or going across the track that roughly are at where the braking boards are. So if we get a little overzealous and we take the braking boards out, you still have some static reference that you can use if you can't see the braking line. So it is about the 200 board. So heavy brake here. For me, I'm going to do this in first gear. And this kind of comes back to what I've learned. When I say, do I want the car on its heel or on its toes? You could do this in second gear. This is essentially a double apex hairpin. You could do it in second gear. I think the revs, it's a little too low. It feels a little too logy, though I think you're still getting a lot of torque out of it. But what for me, what I lose by having it in second gear instead of first is, because the car's in a lower gear, if I have to ease off the throttle, I'm not going to get any help from the gearing to help brake the car and give that little bit of weight transfer forward. So I have to do more with the brake. So my preference is to do this in first. It'll help keep a little bit more weight on the front because it's higher in the rev range and the gearing is actually helping me brake. It'll help with the turning a little bit. And plus, then if I need to adjust the throttle, those little adjustments I can do with the throttle minimize that. It's not so severe of a weight shift. It helps minimize the push. But if I go in a little too hot here in second gear, I'm not getting any help from the gearing to get weight on the front or help slow the car down. If I'm off the brake, I have to get back on it, and the car's going to push wide. So for me, first gear is better for me. If second gear is great for you, that's fine. I mean, this is, again, a lot of this is how I'm approaching it. It's not necessarily my way is not always the right way, but find what works for you. 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna miss. Again, you can use, yeah, again, the way the track limits are, you can, if you want to dip tires onto the grass through here, you can. Um, most cases I'm going to probably miss this apex a bit, or I might be off a little bit, unintentionally, where I'll be off a little bit this one, and I'll try and cut the second half of it and kind of do more of that late apex out. Just be wary if you are going to drop tires here, and especially if you're going to drop tires out of the other one. Just be wary of what you're doing with the steering and how quickly you're getting on the throttle, because you're getting into the grass. You're not going to get a lot of traction. It'll help rotate the car out, and that's fine as long as the car's not over rotating out, where then you're going to have to do a lot of correction to come out of the throttle. So if you can get consistent and good, where you can get it in there and the car jumps out a little bit, but you don't have to do much to correct for that, that's fine. I think it's a little risky, but again, to each their own. So first gear out, I'm gonna bring the car out all the way to the left side here. I'll get on the gas. I'm using where this access road rejoins the circuit here. That's where that grass curves up. That's my point to where I'm gonna get off the throttle and look to turn in for the second half of this double apex hairpin. So I'll be off the gas here. I'll turn the car in. This is the one that I'm probably more often than not going to cut. So I will probably drop some tires here, start rolling back in the throttle. I probably, if I'm doing it right, I'll have probably a little bit of throttle, enough to keep the car accelerating, but I'm not really going to commit trying to get back to full throttle until I'm off the grass. Again, I'm trying to minimize, because the back end of this car is a little bit playful. I'm trying to minimize how much it steps out, because the more it steps out and slides, that's going to cost me, that's going to cost me time, especially here, even though this next section is, kind of another kind of double apex bend, you're still taking it flat out. So if I'm slow out of this corner, I'm slow down at the other end, and it might allow someone to maybe take a look into the next set of corners. So roll back in the throttle, first gear, second gear. I don't know that I don't think I'll, I don't think I'm going to be consistently going all the way out to the right side of the track. I'll probably have it about mid track here, because this is a little bit of a kink. I would say mid track is at best where you'd want to bring it up. Certainly, you don't want to be any more to the left than mid track, because then that really makes that bend harder. So get it out to at least mid track for this. If you want to go all the way out, that's fine. But you're going to be full throttle here, just a slight bend. You can get on this curving a little bit. It's not going to upset the car too much. Again, bring the car out maybe about mid track, maybe a little bit to the right of it. And then I'm going to try and late apex this corner, even if that means I can cut it right where the cone is and right where it straightens out. I want to get it to this left side to set up for the entry for this next set of S's leading onto the back straightaway. Braking point is, with the braking line, is pretty consistent with where these two cones are. Knowing us, those cones are not going to last the race. So usually visually, the other thing, I'm going to back it up, it's a little easier to see when you're back further. But if you look at the coloration of the pavement, so we've got that nice dark sealant line that's going down just to the right, probably about right just to the right of our tires there. But if you look right where the two cones are, you can just see the slight discoloration of the darker gray that's kind of going across the track at that point. So that's usually visually what I'll be spotting as I'm approaching it. So if I see that and then the cones aren't there, and that's kind of the additional thing I'm using. Ironically, if you get a good run, it does line up pretty well with the braking line. So again, to each their own. But again, static references. So I'll brake about here. The turn in, the releasing it. I'm not paying too much attention to exactly where I'm releasing the brake and turning in, really, because my eyes are looking at the curbing as far as how I'm trying to aim the car in. It's probably, I think, it's about where the one cone is where I'm coming off the brakes and then turning in and getting back on throttle. But what I'm looking at is where the start of that curbing is, and I'm going to try. This is where I'll differ sometimes, I think, from the braking line, where I actually will take a shallower entry because I'm trying to aim to where the curbing starts, so that I'm getting onto the curbing. You can kind of see how the coloration you can see on the curbing where clearly cars have crossed over and gotten their tires on the backside of the curbs there. So I do want to try and use as much of this inside curbing as I can. The late apex out, and again, I'm going to try and late apex it so I can kind of go straight across from that curbing to the inside of this curbing, and ultimately keep the car to the left side. Now we head on to probably the most important turn on the track because it leads onto the longest straightaway. Um, and I don't even know if this turn has a name, but what I'm looking for is, again, Forza is a little bit rigid in its track limit, so you can see it's using that white line there. If you've watched Sebring races, or you watch the WEC or IMSA when they've done there, they abuse this corner. They go way wider than what Forza is going to allow, and that's kind of where you can kind of see the cones that are out there. Um, where the drivers will go all the way out and like get all four tires over the white line to then turn onto the back straightaway. Again, opening up that turn so they can carry more speed through it. Forza is not going to let us do that, though you can use, I will be risking time penalties with this line. But for me, the breaking point, if the cones get taken out, the breaking point that I've been playing with is, and I'm going to stop the car right. You can kind of see that discolored sealant that's right in front of the car. That's what I'm looking at as far as trying to gauge where the braking is. So it's I think where I've been braking, I mean getting to it just as that goes out of view, it still might be a little too soon. But again, for me, this is what I'm still trying to work out here. But ultimately I'm gonna cross over the line as much as I dare. It's kind of like Sonoma. You can get, if I'm running hood view, I'm getting, you can get, if you're in hood view and you just line it up where you're straddling the line with your, straight down the middle, you're safe. Once it starts getting about halfway between the mid part of your hood and the right side, it's about where my right side tires are, perspective wise. Just a, whoops, wrong one, this button. So you can see, all right, hood view, you can see where that white line is. Let's see where that actually is with the tires. So, just keep that in mind. If you're in hood view or cockpit view, that's most of the way over there. So I would just say, you know, cross it at your own risk. But it is a quick break. I forget. I don't think I'm downshifting at this point. I think we're still kind of third gear. The turn in, again, visually, this turn's going to look very different on race day because those tire bundles are not going to be there. Again, we're running race regs. This is another one of those, kind of what I pointed out at Spa. This is another one of these inside curves where it's not a smooth curve, from where this curving starts. So it kind of goes a little bit, then it's a little sharp curve, and a little sharp curve, and a little sharp curve until it ends. So visually, it'll give you, if you're watching, you'll see little kind of where those extra little bends are in the curving. You can kind of use those as apexes or target points as far as where to get the car. So for me, as I'm turning in, so the first extra little bend is one is kind of the second, where the second cone is. If you just kind of go down a little bit just in front of the tires. That's where that first little bend is. The second one you can see is just about in between the third and the fourth cone. And I think as I'm getting there, that's what I'm looking for. So it's this extra little bend here is where I'm going to aim for. And if I do it right, I'm actually going to, cross over the line a little bit and use a little bit of this exit curving to get onto the back straight, and then bring the car all the way out. And I'll try and keep it neat and tidy. But when you get in race situations, sometimes you get a little aggressive, and you can use a little bit of that exit curving. It's not going to hurt the car too much, but definitely get off the curving back onto the pavement before it ends. Because once you get in the grass, then you're now trying to fight the car to keep it on the track. Heading down the back straightaway, as I did on the demo laps, you're going to have to go up to fourth gear. And you get a good enough run, you might be able to pick up a little bit of a draft. And now we're heading down to Sunset Bend. So fourth gear, again, you've got the braking boards 300, 200, 100. This is one. So for me, you're gonna blow past the 300 as you're getting to the 200, and maybe about halfway to 2/3. I'm actually gonna still full throttle. I'm gonna start turning the car in, but the commitment for turn in is at 200. So if you're still straight at this point, if you're still parallel with the left side of the track at this point, good luck carrying any speed through Sunset Bend. So let me back it up a little bit. So we'll start turning the car in. And what I'm aiming for, so we'll pass the 100, still full throttle. So I'm going to stop it here. What I'm aiming for, once I've started committing the turn in, I'm looking at, I'm going to move the camera so you can see it. You've got that light pole there that's just between the mirror and the lap count. But what I'm looking for, so that's easier to spot. But what I'm looking for is this last white line that's going across the track, where that meets the white line on the right side, and you can see the color transition from white to yellow. It's that yellow line. That's what I'm looking for. The sooner I can see that and get targeted on it, the better, because I'm going to full throttle. I'm not going to brake until I get to it. So this is where I'm going to brake. I'm already kind of turned in. This I might still be a little shallow, at least in this example. So just pay, but it'll be brake, 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 brake from fourth gear down to second. This much like the other end of the track. You probably could do it in third. It'll be a little low in the rev range, but this for me, as far as keeping the car balanced, I'd rather have it in the lower gear with the higher RPM, so that I've got more gearing benefit and I can actually balance the car easier with the throttle by adjusting the throttle and rolling in, rolling out of it. If I have it in the higher gear, then if I'm too fast, I can't just ease off the gas to slow the car down to get it to kind of make corrections. I have to start using the brake. And the second you get on the brake, that's really going to kill your speed. So again, hashtag me personally, I'd rather do this in second. It feels like it's a little high in the rev range, but I think it gives me better control over the balance of the car through the corner, especially here, because we know Sunset Bend has a lot of bumps through here. Ironically, and I feel bad for Landrail and iRacing, he had that MX5 race where I think he just carried a little too much speed in and hit some of those bumps and lost the back end of the car. And at that point, then he nosed it in the inside pit wall. He had a really good race going, but again, same philosophy here. I want to be able to keep the car balanced as best I can. So, I'll probably with this car, I'll probably let the car, getting it down to second gear, come out to mid track, maybe a little bit more to the left. If I'm desperately trying to dive bomb somebody in this corner, I might even flirt with the line on the outside. But I would say, try to in your practice, try to keep the car, inside the track limits, and get consistent with that. That way, when you get in the race situation, then you've got some wiggle room for racing situations. So again, second gear. Then I'm going to start turning it back in. I'm looking for the mobile sign. I'm going to hug and follow this line and keep it as close in as I can under the Mobile One bridge. And where I'm aiming, and I'm going to probably cross the line a little bit, is where, again, where the inside grass will take another little sharp turn here, and you can kind of see it in the track map where it's kind of, even Sunset Bend, it's like kind of a little straight, then it's a little turn, and then there's a final little kink onto the front straightaway. So that little kink is what I'm looking for to get the car at the apex and rolling back into the throttle. So second gear, so right about here, and then getting onto the front straightaway, I'm going to look for Mr. Cameraman on the scaffolding on the left side. That's my target that I want the car out and parallel with the left side white line. Again, this is the other thing where I think track limits are a little too restrictive for us here on Forza. Because again, if you watch real life racing, the wall is the track limit. So they will use all of this track out. We don't get to do that. So second gear, you're shift up to third. So out, get it parallel here, up to third, onto the front stretch. You can start letting the car come back across. Usually I will try to be mid-track or a little bit to the right of it by the time I get to start finish. Fourth gear, and that's a lap of Sebring. So again, much simpler track. I think it's going to be more about, again, it's a power track. So I think for you guys starting up front, you're going to have, you keep your nose clean, you keep all four tires on the track, you're going to be tough for the rest of us to catch. So with that, let's get out a test drive. And click OK. Now the initial estimate for the race is 25 laps. So part of me running this race, kind of the mock race starting a minute behind, is to kind of validate that. Is that still reasonable, for race time? Do we may need to adjust that? In addition to just me getting laps and getting into rhythm. So we'll do the same classes, same delays, and let's get started. Enough talk, more racing. So if you're new here, when I run these mock races, I try to find AI that, when I set the buckets, I try to find AI cars that I'm going to be able to catch. I will try and find a group of AI cars that will run similar pace to what I do, and then usually throw in a couple that are quicker, so that either I try to catch them in traffic, or maybe I start them behind me and have somebody pushing me. Again, it's the one part of it. It's not going to exactly simulate, what I'm going to face on Thursday, because we're all in the same car, running relatively the same pace, but it helps at least give me some traffic situations. So starting up front is the division that this car is in. It's the historic road racing. In equal equipment, I am much quicker than the AI there. The second class of cars is historic drag racing. They're going to be much quicker in a straight line. They're going to suck in the corners, but it's going to be fun because we're going to see some three-wheel leaning through a lot of the sharper corners. Then I've got the Bertha Grand Prix division in front of me. These guys are definitely quicker, especially here. I think they're going to murder me down the long straights. But I'm hoping I can make up some of that gap in traffic. And then little old me. All right, so let's see what we can do. First lap, cold tires, third gear, gentle. I've got the little voice of Jackie Stewart in my head going, be kind to your car and it will be kind to you, and a really bad Scottish accent. So that's second gear. And the car just doesn't have as much point on the turn in. That's a little late. We can salvage that. That turn's not as important as this one. Again, pushing a little bit, so I stab the throttle just a little bit more to try and help the back end step out to kind of make up for the lack of rotation I gave it on turn in. All right, 3, 2. Ooh, that was a little too much on that way, crossing over the yellow line. And I will flirt with that white line. here, look for the... That's... Okay, that was pretty good. How did I do that? That's a little too much. A little too early. So even on that braking, I'm starting to turn the car in. So it's not really a straight line threshold brake. It is a bit more of a trail brake in. And that way the car has kind of already started its rotation by the time then I let off the brake and commit to the corner. Oh, that was... I was looking at the track map and turned in a little bit later than I wanted to there. And that would be a track, that would be a time penalty on the track limits. 125.1, oh, getting there. The controller, I did a 124.8, and I just have not been able to get there with the wheel. And again, for me, it's that difference between, you know, this track, I guess, suits a controller a little bit better. You can kind of chuck the car into the corner. Whereas a wheel, it's not as chuckable. That might be part of the difference. It's not so much that I'm like, oh my god, it's, you know, I should race controller this week. No. Yeah, see, stab the throttle a little bit. You can see how the back end kicked out. So then I got to spend a little time correcting it. It's not ideal. You know, if I can get a little bit of that slide without needing to do a lot of correcting, that's kind of the ideal for me. I keep flirting with that inside line. A little early, so just try and salvage it as best I can. So it's about halfway between those two white lines. I think is where I'm. Oh, and one other thing. Again, because Sebring is a proper road racing track, there's not a lot of runoff areas, especially some of these braking zones. You don't really have any margin for error on the braking. So, you know, I'll point it out here. You just want to make sure, give yourself enough room so that you're not getting tires in the grass as you're getting into the brakes, and especially as you're coming off the brakes to turn in, because again, the difference in grip, that'll also pitch the car sideways a little more than you probably want it to. Neat and tidy. Still a little early. And if you run a manual with clutch, just be aware again, the upshifts can be a little bit harsh and might, you know, step the back end out a little bit. So just be careful. Oop, third gear, what am I doing? Just be careful when you're upshifting to third coming out of the final corner. So again, give yourself room here as well. You don't want to drop left sides in the grass when you're trying to slow the car down. Somebody's already taken out the cones. And that's a cut track, that's a time penalty. That's why we practice. Again, these turns will look completely different without the tire barriers. So for me, for these mock races, I will pit about, I usually pit about midway. Oh, hello. I had no idea. I'm glad I caught him just as he got to me. Otherwise, that would have been really bad. But he's going to get me here on the front straightaway. Though I'm going to go slightly defensive just to see what the AI does. No, he's going to go. No. Put it down to second. Just again, for putting it in second there is just to help let the gearing help slow the car without, putting a lot of weight transfer. Oh, he's taking a look. Yep, he took a look. Do a little fade on him. Yeah, it was a bit early there. Same thing here. I'm going to set up. He's going to get a heck of a run down. Oh, he's going to clear me before the braking. So he's got it. So the other thing to note with that yellow line that I just kind of noticed, again, there's things that don't make themselves as apparent until you're up to speed. If you notice, if I'm doing sunset turn right, I'm going to straddle that yellow line, but the car should be kind of parallel with it. Again, it's one of those instances where it's not a very smooth, symmetrical curve. So it's getting the car kind of lined up where it's still a little bit straight. Let's see if I can point it out next time. Just a little quick dab of brake. I turned in early, tried to use the throttle to adjust to get the car to a little bit of extra rotation, still pushed wide. Oh, that was way deep and way not enough braking. Okay, looks like a lot of the rest of the F1 cars are taking their pits now, so I'm going to have more trouble behind me. That's better. Where I'm just going to lose out because they've got a little bit of a horsepower advantage, but then they're going to really break in here. So let's see if I can let's try going outside. Okay, so we've got enough of a gap there. Let's see if I can set up for a pass on the exit. Nope. Okay, so they're not as slow through that corner as I thought they might be. Kitty toeses. A little too much, little too close to the inside line there. Excuse me. One of those, I wish the draft was just a little bit more. But since I know that he's not going to break as badly or as early as I thought that he might, I think I can take my normal line through here. As far as normal braking, I was a little hesitant last lap, but yeah, they are pretty good through there. It's the really slow turns that's where I've got to try and get by him. See if I can set up a run out of this corner. A little bit, though I think I bumped him just enough to push him ahead. A little wheel spin there. And time penalty. Probably a little too close to try and cut to his inside, but again, I don't have the straight line power to stay in his draft. And I'm apexing a bit early there, giving up a whole bunch of track. Lap 12. A little bit late. All right, looks like we're starting to catch. I don't know if some of the historic road racers are in that pack in front of us, but it's about halfway, so you know what? Just for entertainment, yuck value, let's pit at lap 13 and see if that blue car, the historic road racer up there in 17th, kind of helps get me through this pack. Because again, I have a little bit better. You know, what I'm giving up maybe in just outright pace. I'm out here. Don't hit me. I can make up for just in the ability to navigate the traffic a little easier than the drivatars can. And for, you know, Thursday races, it is a pit window between 15 and 25 minutes. So got a little bit of a draft. Yeah, I'm going to take a look. And annoy him because I'm going to take a look, make the pass, and then immediately go into the pits. Excuse me, I'm going to shove my way by you and then go take my pit stop. All right. So pit exit at Sebring is always a bit interesting because there's no, you're going to kind of get released and there's no kind of, unlike other tracks where you have like a defined pit exit and where it rejoins, Sebring's not so much. Usually, typically what I'll do is I'll just kind of go all the way out, cross over the yellow line here, and then just rejoin the track out here. I think that's usually the safest way to do that, especially if you're trying to rejoin in the midst of in traffic and people fighting for position. Oh, that's a little quick. Cool tires. So that's how I do it. I don't know that there's any, if there's a definitive marker that we use to say, okay, you can't rejoin the racing circuit until you pass this point. All right, so we're back in last. For this being more of a power track, definitely the historic drag racers have a good advantage. They're actually pretty good analogs this race. That's a little wide. But I don't know how many of them have. I'm assuming everybody in front of me here, you know, these next three have already made their pit stops. Right now, I would say just kind of based off, excuse me, the first part of this race, I think I'm going to be lucky to get into the top 10. But let's hope, at least for sake of practice and for streaming entertainment, let's see if we can at least get in some more battles and set up some passing situations. Again, talking about where's the best place to pass. The obvious places are obvious. You get a good run down into Sunset Bend here at the back straightaway. It's a great place to set up a pass. But to do that, you really have to be consistent and quick out of here. Not like that. That's a little too much oversteering. And you can't miss shifts. If you miss shifts, you forget about carrying momentum. So for Sunset Bend, ideally, this is not one that I would try to dive bomb somebody on under braking, unless I was alongside. And even like that pass I made before I made the pit stop, it's a little questionable if that's because I wasn't quite alongside. It was just kind of off the back corner. But I know the driver tires, it's like they're not gonna. They at least have some awareness of what's going on around them. Not always, but the next, turn one. If you get a good run, you can set up a pass. Obviously, is this turn 2 or turn 3 technically? Probably won't get anything here unless there's a big traffic jam. So usually set up out of here. I would say this next series of corners is more passing of opportunity. If someone really gets it wrong and you get a really good run, you might be able to do a pass here. But if you can't, I would say then try to focus on getting set up where you can maximize your exit speed out of this corner to set up a pass down the back straightaway without running into the back of them. That was a little bit mistimed. So yeah, clearly alongside, clearly now ahead. But because he's on the outside, I do need to really make sure I leave a little bit of room. And if you find someone's on your inside and you can see them getting down to Sunset Bend, it's probably best to back off a little bit and give up the position. Because if you try to stick with them on the outside and they push wide, at best you both just go off course and have to worry about track penalties. At worst, you're in the tire barriers. Let's see if I can catch. I know there's probably still a few more of those historic road racers. I think are still in the mix up in there somewhere. Hopefully they. So I'm looking at the track map. I'm just trying to gauge. Where am I? I'm hoping I can catch some of the green cars. That turn's probably going to be a problem for me on race day. Keep going. I flirt with the line. It's like I want to open that corner up as much as possible. Alright, I might get 1 or 2 clean laps in before I catch cars in front of me, if I catch the cars in front of me. So let's make them count. I got on the outside a little bit. early. Good sunset bend. Good sunset bend. Oh, no, 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 no. Ah. Because that'll dirty this lap too. And 25.2, not bad. Catching. So I'm not really paying attention to intervals. 6.6. We'll see where that's at the line. It's a little bit early. Got a couple late hitters, which might give me some traffic behind me. Oh, that's early. Don't dirty my lap. Don't dirty my lap. I should be able to pull it, yeah. I should be able to pull enough out on him where he will not dirty my lap because he's slipstreaming. Not really making up the gap to the 17. I am barely. About the best I think I've taken that. 5.2, that's right in about where I've been running. Close this lap out. Up 3/10. I don't know how I'm up 3/10, but I'm up 3/10. Watch, I'll find a way to lose 2 of that right here. Alright, see if I can at least maintain. this one's going to be slow. Way wide. Probably at least 2/10 down from the previous lap. Oh, 4/10 down. Okay. Well, at this point, it's no longer about the lap time. It's can I pick up another position or two in 2 laps? That yeah, I'm getting aggressive because I want to pick up at least position and maybe have a shot at 15. Um, not an ideal place to stick a pass, just because you're compromising your own speed down the straightaway. So you might pick up the position, but what you're giving up on pace will allow, if there's somebody close in front of that, they're going to be able to start pulling away. So choose your passing. You know, ideally passing should be done where you can get by the people uh, without without compromising your pace too much. Certainly, as you work your way up through, you know, competing against people in your own bucket, you know, that's going to be a little more difficult because you're running similar pace. That's a little bit wide. I don't think we're probably not going to be close enough. 2 seconds up. Well, we'll see. Again, I'm giving up a lot of straight line speed, and it's just that the slow section after turn 1 is really the only place I'm really making up the gap to the green cars. But if I can get 15th. Turned in a little bit early, so I can't get back to full throttle till I'm almost out of the corner. This is where I'm going to make up the most of the time on 15. All right, so how aggressive do I get? I mean, it is the AI, so you know they're not going to look. They're not going to try and find me in the team garages after the race. Let's see if I can actually do this cleanly. Well, that answers that question. All right, he's still kind of there. All right, he backed off. Oh, but he's taking a look. I was ready for the contact. All right, so 25 minutes. Yeah, 25 laps is a bit long. So, you know, let's see. Let's go back. So it's about a minute and a half lap. So I did 37:15, minute and a half lap. So let's see, 36, 35. So yeah, it might be. Excuse me, might only be 24 laps. Maybe as few as 23, but you know, 25 too many. But that's Sebring Short and the Falcon XB. Again, two very different tracks this week. So it should make for some fun racing, I think. But with that, I'm going to call it a stream. Hope you guys have a wonderful Sunday. Happy Easter to those that celebrate it. and we'll see you guys on the track on Thursday. So happy racing.